There are so many riders out there with such incredible motorbikes who never actually ride them the way they first thought they would have imagined it. So welcome back to Talks and Tales. Today we're going to have a bit of a chat about why most riders never ride the way that they actually want to ride. And I think the first topic is probably just going to be fear. I think fear is such a huge part. And to be honest, I think it's probably why a lot of people actually ride motorbikes. It's almost like a bit of a rebellious side. And, being out there on two wheels when most people don't want them to be, I think it's almost... I suppose that's one thing for me. It always kind of drive me into wanting to do it. Mainly because I was told I wasn't allowed. But on a serious note, I think fear of crashing, I think is a huge quite a huge piece. And I think a lot of it comes down to, you tell anyone that you ride motorbikes, the first thing they always say to you is, "Oh, isn't that dangerous? Do you really? Your wife lets you do that, or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, they let you do that." And you know what? The amount of times I've heard that, and you in your own head, you do a bit of an eye roll of like, "Oh God, another one of those." And over the years, I used to get quite defensive over it, and now I sit there and I say, "You honestly, when you get on a motorbike, if you're that way inclined, you get on a motorbike, be a pillion, and you'll understand how freeing it is to be on a motorbike, how mentally freeing it is, but also just being off your phone, not doom scrolling, actually being out in nature and enjoying it, the smells." But yeah, I think fear is a huge part of it. And I remember having a conversation with a friend a good number of years ago, and I jokingly said, we turned up at one of the motorcycle live events. It might have been the one in London, in all fairness. And I said, "You'll always know a biker is a real biker, or you'll know that the individual is a biker." And he was like, "Oh, how?" I said, "Look around the room, and most people will be walking with a limp." And I'm not wrong, in all fairness. We all have a fall at some point. It might be a very small fall where you're getting on a bike on a gravel track and you end up falling over, and it's more your embarrassment than anything else, your ego that's battered and bruised rather than your actual body. And then I got asked, well, then why do you ride motorbikes then? If you know that you're going to fall off. And it always brought me back to this moment where, when you were learning to ride a pedal bike, and you think to yourself, how long did it take to learn to ride a pedal bike? Now, I have a younger sister, so I remember teaching her to ride a pedal bike. And then now I have kids, so I've taught my eldest to ride a pedal bike. And the amount of times you fall off learning to ride a pedal bike. And I think it is just part of learning. And I think it's part of, do you know what? Human nature. I'm going to pick myself back up. Almost creating that resilience in kids and adults today, that actually we're not made of glass. Yes, motorbikes are dangerous. Yes, there is horrific injuries that can be had. I think one thing that from my personal experience around motorbikes is that it's not always the fall that hurts. It's 9 times out of 10, it's what stops that forward or that sliding momentum. Whether it be a curb, whether it be a lamppost or a tree, it's that impact that our human bodies just they don't particularly like very much. I think another fear aspect is probably fear of riding alone. Now, me personally, I don't generally have that fear because, to be honest, I absolutely love riding on my own. I love being in my own head. I like to kind of be present in the moment. And I think we've touched on it previously on a previous podcast about how riding a motorbike is quite a meditative thing. And I think that's a huge part for me is around motorbikes, is around that kind of meditative state. I think that's a huge part for me. So, but I can see actually how a lot of people might fear riding alone, especially in some of the places that we do inevitably end up in, like on top of North Yorkshire moors. It beggars to think really what would happen if someone did fall off and end up in a ditch and the bike wasn't on the road. So a lot of people ride in groups. But I think, to be honest, that alone comes with some fears. Fear of kind of being a bit laughed at, a bit joked at. Someone might have turned up on a little 125 to a group of guys that are riding R1s, R6s, Kawasaki Ninjas. You're gonna. I think there is still that stigmatism of, oh, you shouldn't be riding with us. I think that's a big part as well of some people's fear. But to be honest, my fear isn't around that. My fear is around kind of being egged on in those group rides. I won't name names, but I remember going for a ride with a group over in Yorkshire, and they were all really nice guys, absolutely amazing guys. Some of the guys there were clearly had been riding for many, many years. And then there was generally a younger audience that hadn't obviously been riding for many, many years. And there was a real mix of technical ability from all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom. And there was also a big mix of bikes as well, from big super bikes to Touras to, the small little 125s as well, and some scooters. And I think for me personally, the real danger in group rides is when you try and ride beyond your own abilities. And I think that's for me is my biggest fear when I am riding in groups, especially if I'm leading a group. It's one of the things I hate doing, to be honest. I hate leading a group ride, because I'm no Valentino Rossi, but I do like to ride occasionally a little bit quicker, and I'm always really conscious of who's behind me, who's following me, and then vice versa. When I have someone in front of me that's been riding a lot longer than I have, and I have to really, really mentally say to myself, "You riding your own ride today. You're not riding his ride or her ride." I think that's a huge, huge point of it. I think the other thing as well that kind of affects people's riding is confidence gaps. The lads that I was riding around with, there was one or two things. It was either being a young lad that you either had absolutely zero fear whatsoever, you would come up to a corner at stupid speeds and just hang on for dear life and hope to God that you went around the corner with absolutely no fear. Sometimes ending up over a wall and in a field. Or you were a bit more sensible and you went fast on the straights and slow and steady in the corners. I think when I was younger, I think that was probably more myself, fast on the straights and slow and steadier in the corners. But I think confidence gaps. I think confidence kind of doesn't kind of disappear overnight, especially now. I mean, I'm recording this in it's kind of beginning of January, so it's been a good couple of weeks now since I've ridden. And I think winter alone, like a lot of people will tend to tuck their bikes away for the winter, do some servicing, do some tinkering, but they won't tend to ride much in the winter. And I think then when you then fire the bike back up when it starts to get a bit warmer and you go out, I know that if I've not ridden for a long period of time, even a couple of months, I notice it takes me a while to get my head back into the game when I'm riding, focus on certain different things and get used to how that kind of clutch feels and what I can get away with the tyres and what I can't, and understanding when the tyres are warm and when they're not. I think, that's for me is one of the big things is when you take time off from riding, is just when you do return, don't be making silly maneuvers and just taking your time. I think the other thing as well is comparing yourself to others. Now, we all joke about this, don't we? All the chicken strips. And to be fair, I am absolutely guilty of doing this as well. I remember like walking when I was a little younger, walking up to a few bikes and we're like, oh, bloody hell, that guy can't the corner. What's he doing? But I think try not to compare yourself to other riders. Everyone will do their own ride. I think that's the main thing. And I think the other point as well, why people might not ride the way they want to ride, is cost. I know I briefly touched on that in the previous podcast as well. Is just how costly it can be. Now, bikes can be cheap. They can be cheap because I remember that's how I got into motorbikes. Was that it was far freeing and cheaper to jump on a little Aprilia 125 and ride that to and from work than it was to get a bus to the train station, a train, two buses, then to work. It was far cheaper just to jump on a little 125 and a ride myself to North Leeds to where I was working at the time. But like, tires alone can be expensive. You can make them as cheap as you want, but I think I've learned over the years that you don't skimp on tires. I remember years ago when I first moved to big bikes. My first big bike was a GSX-R 600 S-Rad. It was beautiful in like in light blue and white. And I remember I didn't have the cash at the time to buy new tires, and my tires were a bit shot. So I went to local bike tire place in Bradford, and looking at different tires, and I went with the Maxes, and I thought that's all I can afford at the time. And I struggled for a good year. I didn't get on with them. I just didn't like them at all. Nothing against Maxes, if anyone's listening from Maxes. Yeah, I just didn't get on with them. Didn't get on with them at all. And then when I then made the move to an R1, I decided, you know what? I need some decent tyres. And I bought a set of Pirelli Diablo Corsas, I think they were off the top of my head. And oh my god, game changing! They were like night and day compared to Max's. Now, a bit of a caveat to that. Later on, I end up having a little accident on the R1. Car drove into the side of me, and I took a little bit of time out, and then I bought another GSX-R 600 S-Rad, but in like a black and purple. And I remember it had Maxes on it. I thought, oh, I have to change them. Jumped on the bike and took it for a ride. Oh my god, it was completely different compared to the original GSX-R I had. And I have a sneaky suspicion that original GSX-R had definitely been down the road and probably a bit of maybe a bit of a bent chassis somehow or something. It just didn't. It felt completely different to what this second GSX-R S-Rad that I'd had. But yeah, my advice was just don't skimp on tyres. You can generally get some reasonable deals, but yeah, tyres are a big thing for me. I think insurance premiums as well. My biggest bugbear with insurance premiums, and I don't know if anyone else has the same tight Yorkshireman gripe that I do, is the first year when you get a bike, it doesn't matter if it's a 125 or if it's 1000cc. Generally, your first year of having that bike, whether you've gone from 1000cc then down to a 600, that new 600cc bike will cost you more than that 1000cc, just from my experience. Because what you find is, and I swear, insurance companies turn around and go, you know what, it's a new bike, doesn't know how to ride it, even though he's been riding for 15, 20 years, doesn't know how to ride it, so he's probably going to have a crash in that first year. So you know what we'll do? We're going to up his premiums to try and cover our costs. And I'm fairly sure that's what they do, because then the second year, it drops significantly. I started off on a massive rant then, didn't I? Lost myself on my own trend of thought. But yeah, insurance can be expensive. That's what I was going to say. I remember now. The one thing, many years ago, I ended up getting a speeding fine on my car license. And at the time I was driving a company car, and I had a motorbike as my own form of transport, and I was going a bit quick. I held my hands up. The copper pulled me over, and I got let off. If I'm being totally honest, completely let off. I think I was doing 83 in a 50. It was a dual carriageway before anyone bites my head off. But yeah, so the copper pulled me over, asked me what I was doing. I explained. I was coming back from the lakes. I've been working, and he let me off with £120 fine and 3 points on my license, which I very quickly took out of his hand and drove home very shakily. I don't think I would have got that leniency now. So I got points on my license, and then when I went to renew my motorbike insurance, my premiums had gone up. I was like, hang on, that was for my car license, not my motorbike license. I went, no. It's the same. It's the same. Your license is your license. Doesn't matter whether you're driving or you're on your bike. It's points. I'm like, bloody hell. I said, all right, fair enough. And then a couple of years later, I went to I think I was borrowing my brother's car at the time. It was winter time. I tended to always try and find a car over winter to avoid the snow. And I was using his car, and I went to sort out my insurance. And obviously, I hadn't had my own car or my own no claims bonus for a car. So I said to him, well, I've got X amount of years, motorbike no claims. Can I use that? And they went, no. I went, why? And they went, because it's for a bike. I went, hang on. I'm having my pants pulled down here. I said, it was only a couple of years ago that I got 3 points on my license, but that accounted for both car and bike. But then when I come to insure it and use my no claims, I can't use it because it was for a bike. How does that work? So yeah, he ended up being a grumpy tight Yorkshireman. But yeah, there you are. So think about that when you're buying bikes and insuring them. I think the other thing is time pressures. I remember years ago I didn't have kids, and jumping on a motorbike and disappearing for 5 hours was totally acceptable. Now I've got 2 kids. I've got an 8-year-old and I got a 2-year-old, and my God, trying to get time to disappear for a couple of hours isn't always that easy. So I think time and feeling a bit selfish that you're wanting that time to kind of disappear and disappear on your motorbike. I know I sometimes get a lot of stick from my wife from when I come back and I then say, I need to clean my bike. Clean your bike? You've been gone 4 hours. You ain't cleaning your bike now. Do it later. And I'm thinking, fucking hell, it needs cleaning. So yeah, I try and push my luck, but not too far. But I think one thing that's important here is to kind of maintain your kind of confidence level and your skill set is to just take shorter rides. I have a couple of circular routes from my home that I know quite well. That I tend to disappear for an hour and then come back, especially in the summer when it's a lot easier to kind of disappear, and it's later nights as well, or lighter nights. Oh God, I love that. 10 o'clock and it's still light outside. I absolutely love summer for that, and that's one of the biggest things for me for summer that I actually love. In the winter when it's like half 3, 4 o'clock and it's going dark and you've only just picked the kids up, it's bloody depressing, that, isn't it? I keep saying to the wife we should disappear to either southern France or northern Spain, so there's more riding routes, but I keep getting told no. I don't think that we ride enough, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things, isn't it? That we go out and buy a bike and we think to ourselves, right, we're going to ride that for X amount, and we don't end up riding it. I know quite a few guys actually locally that have bought a bike. I've seen them riding around, do little trips to and from work, and then a couple of months later you see We Buy Any Bike rock up outside the garage, and I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, I've just sold my bike. Why? I'm not using it that much. But yeah, I would just say buy a second-hand bike, buy it cheap, and if you leave it for a couple of months, leave it in there for a couple of months. Don't get rid of it. Please don't get rid of it. It's so good for your mental health. But yeah, that's the main thing. Just use it, ride it, and don't lose the skill set. I think that's the main thing. As well, one of the main things is overthinking. I sometimes find myself doing this, especially when I'm riding. And it's normally the time when I take a break from riding. If I'm out and about and I kind of I'm looking at a corner and I think to myself, right, outside to in, does the road look good? Are there any cars around? Right, let's bend it in, crank it over, and out the corner. If I ever find myself coming up to a corner and mentally hesitating, thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to make it, or halfway through a corner going, oh, shh, no, I'll generally just stop. I'll stop the bike, pull over, have a few minutes, have a breather, and then reset if you like, and then get back on it. And in some cases, I've even set off from a ride, got 5 minutes from home, and gone, do you know what? My mind isn't isn't where it needs to be. My mind's wandering to what video shoot I've got to do next, or what jobs did I need to do at home, and that at that point I stop the ride dead, turn around and go home, because I've learned over the years that by going on a ride, and if you're in that mindset, you're an accident waiting to happen. Everyone on this, whoever listens to this podcast, you'll know when you ride bikes, every car driver, every bus driver, every lorry driver, every guy on a bike you got to treat him as a nut job. You really do. You've got to have eyes in the back of your head. And over the years, I found myself, I always think about ride defensive, and I always mentally have like a bubble around me. And if someone ever enters that bubble because they're either annoyed that I'm not going quick enough, or they're trying to race me, or they're not happy that I've filtered past them, and they start encroaching on that bubble, I used to see red. I used to get really angry, turn around and give them what for. But now I sit there and go, you know what? You're in my space. Don't like it. I'm off. And I will happily just open that throttle and just disappear, because there's no point in being around drivers like that. You're asking for trouble. At the end of the day, they're in a cage. If something hits them, 9 times out of 10, they'll be absolutely fine. We're not in cages. We're vulnerable. All we're wearing is probably a Gore-Tex jacket at best, with Kevlar jeans and armoured gear. Nothing's going to stand up to a 1.5, 2 ton vehicle smashing you in the side. Your best, keeping you cool and just disappearing. That's, for me personally, that's what it's about. And I think the other thing as well, and I hear this a lot from a lot of the guys that I ride with, is I don't ride in wet. Don't like wet weather. I sometimes make a point of going out in wet weather, maybe because I'm a sadist. I don't know, but I've got in the habit now of just, when I know I've got a bit of spare time, I can clean the bike, I'll generally go out in wet weather. And it's mainly because I don't like the idea of doing a tour on a motorbike and then thinking, I can't do the 100 miles or 200, 300 miles a day because it might rain. And I like to kind of hone my skills in that wet weather as well. I do have I used to ride motocross bikes, so I don't tend to mind the bike having a little bit of a squirm. I used to do a little bit of trials riding as well. To be fair, trials riding, if no one's ever done it, go and do it, even if it's just a taster session. I think for me, that was the one thing that really helped step up my motorbike control, my clutch control, the balance control, the way I moved over the bike. It's probably one of the best things I ever did, was doing a bit of trials riding. It helped really hone those low speed controls. Definitely, if anyone does that, go and give that a go, because it was absolutely fantastic. But yeah, going back to, I have a habit of doing this, going off tangent, don't I? Riding in wet weather, I think most people don't like it, but just do it. You don't want to be caught out riding on a nice sunny day and all of a sudden it absolutely throws it down. Then you end up panicking. You need to be in a situation where you know that whatever comes your way, you're comfortable with dealing with it. Now, I always have this little thing, and I don't know why I do it, and it probably makes absolutely zero sense whatsoever. But whenever I'm riding on a road, and it could be cold, a bit greasy, or it could be a really sunny day and nice and dry, I'll take my left foot off and I'll just rest it on the tarmac on the floor as I'm riding along. Don't mind, it could be 30, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. And it's probably absolute horse manure, but in my head, the friction or resistance that I get on that foot almost gives me a mental gauge of how much grip I've got, and then I have my own little like gauge of how rough I can be with the bike, how much I can lean it over, how much power I can put in the corners. And I do find that even in the wet, sometimes actually, if it's raining, there's actually still quite a lot of grip. What I find worse is when it's freezing cold like it is now. The roads are we've been covered in grit. You've got slush, you've got horrible stuff on the ground. It's really greasy and horrible. That for me is worse than just riding in rain. I think that's a huge thing for me. It's just going out and riding in the rain. Buy the gear. You know what I mean? If you've got a decent waterproof coat and decent waterproof pants, You know, you can ride for hours. Like, yeah, you might get a bit wet, but it'll dry. You will dry. So I think the main thing to take away from here is that most riders aren't held back by the bike. They're generally held back by what's kind of going on in here. So I think understanding that your mindset has to be right before you're heading out on these rides. I think you've also got to give yourself a bit of permission to ride in unforgiving conditions, whether it's raining, it's hot, it's a miserable day. Just get out and ride. Like, if you go and experience these different road conditions, that's what's going to build your kind of mental twitch responses when the bike starts to slide a little bit, or when you're looking at a road and you see someone slams on in front of you, you don't to apply that brake gradually rather than just give it a stab and you end up locking the front. I mean, you're quite lucky. Like, these days we've got ABS and bits and pieces, but like the bikes that I used to ride didn't have ABS. I remember going down a road on my Yamaha Phaser and a guy cut in front of me, and I had actually done this foot on the floor check, and I knew that it was greasy, and then the car go in front of me, so I then applied the brakes, and I actually applied it a little bit too quick. I felt the front lock up, and I thought, I don't have ABS, so I let go, which, I'll be honest with you, took balls, because when you're flying towards a car, it's not your instinct reaction, but that kind of comes with practice and experience. I let go and I reapplied gradually at the same time, then applying that rear brake, and stopped within a meter of the car. It's building that confidence to go out in these different conditions and experience them. And I think the main thing as well, just do short rides. Even just short rides are fine. Solo rides, honestly, for your own mental health, go out and do solo rides. Always tell someone where you're going, roughly. At least then, if you don't end up, coming back, or something happens, you have a breakdown or something, at least someone knows roughly where you've gone. But I think the main thing is just turning up and doing the miles matters for your own mental sanity, but also for your own experience and your riding technique and ability. So, I'll leave you all with this. What's stopping you from riding more? Is it, gear? Is it motorbike? Is it, conditions on the road? Or is it time? Is it time? Please do interact with our social media channel, especially on Facebook. Just leave us a comment. Just tell us what's stopping you guys from riding, if there is anything. Or if you're the kind of bloke that does 10,000 miles a year on your motorbike, again, tell us. It'd be really interesting to hear from you. And if you've got some interesting stories, some interesting mishaps, again, please just write in the comments and we'll get back to you. And thank you very much, everyone. Looking forward to the next one, and keep it shiny side up, guys. Take it easy.